Today in chapters 31 and 32 of Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, we will discuss Argala and Atmakaraka, the cosmic locks and the king of the soul and the 7 factors of the soul. We're looking directly into the architectural mechanics of your destiny and the sovereign spiritual entity that governs absolutely all of it. In this explainer, we're going to move systematically. We'll start with the mechanics of chapter 31 to decode the structural grid of planetary intervention. From there, we'll transition into the spiritual mathematics of chapter 32, calculating the exact planetary hierarchy that defines your very soul. All right, let's jump right into our first major concept, the formation of these cosmic locks. Diving straight into the original Sanskrit text, over on page 311 of the source material, we encountered chapter 31, verses 2 through 9. Sage Parashara states, Sargala Namayata Bhavapa Phalam Dritam. Simply translated, he's saying, I explain below Argala to know the definite effects of houses and planets. The sage is setting up a massive foundational rule here. He's explaining that planets in the 4th, 2nd, and 11th positions from a specific house or planet cause an intervention. What we're really parsing is the exact mathematical blueprint of how planets reach out across the zodiac to influence one another, not just by their aspect, but by their structural placement. The definition itself is just fascinating. Argala in Sanskrit figuratively translates to a bolt, a latch, or a cosmic lock. Astrologically and philosophically, it represents a planetary intervention or an impediment. Think of your birth chart like a crazy, busy intersection in a major city, right? The planets are the vehicles carrying your karma. Argala represents the traffic lights, the roadblocks, and the express lanes. A planet causing Argala effectively slaps a lock on the affairs of a house. It can force an outcome, completely block a result, or deeply modify how that specific karma manifests in your life. So, how exactly do we construct an Argala? Let's break down the math. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding how to build and break these locks. You see, Argala operates on a strict axis of action and reaction. A planet placed in the 4th house from a point of focus causes Argala. It essentially turns the key. But a planet in the 10th house from that exact same point will obstruct or unlock that Argala. It's perfectly balanced. The 2nd house causes Argala, while the 12th house obstructs it. The 11th house causes it, and the 3rd house obstructs it. Practically speaking, if you have a planet trying to manifest its results, but another planet sits in an Argala-causing position, its energy is intervened with. The only way out? An opposing planet in the obstructing house has to be mathematically stronger. It's a literal cosmic tug-of-war. Of course, the cosmos has exceptions to every rule, so there are a few special rules of intervention we definitely need to note. First up, the 5th house is also an Argala place, and that gets counteracted by a planet in the 9th. Second, because the lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu, always move in retrograde, their Argalas obstructions are counted in reverse. Makes sense, right? Finally, we have this wildly fascinating mathematical nuance called Viparita Argala. Parashar states that if there are 3 or more malefic planets in the 3rd house, they don't just obstruct, they cause a highly effective intervention of their own, which becomes extremely favorable. It's as if this extreme negative pressure builds up and then suddenly flips into a massive positive release. Moving on from the mechanical locks, let's meet the sovereign ruler of the chart, the Atmakaraka, the king of the soul. In the text for chapter 32, we find the core verses defining this concept. Parsing this beautiful Sanskrit, verses 3 through 8 state, Atma Surya Dik Ketanam, Madhye Hyan Shadago Graha. The simple English translation is so profound. Among the planets from the Sun to Saturn, whichever has traversed the maximum number of degrees in a particular sign is called the Atmakaraka. Here, Parashara is giving us the supreme instruction for identifying the absolute core of a person's astrological identity. It's not necessarily the sun, and it's not automatically the ascendant lord. It is purely based on the mathematical traversal of degrees. You know, the philosophical weight of the Atmakaraka really cannot be overstated. Atma means soul, and Karaka means significator. This planet is literally the king of the soul. While your ascendant shows your physical path and the moon shows your mind, the Atmakaraka represents the absolute, deepest desire of your soul for this specific incarnation. It dictates the overarching affairs of the native. The entire chart, including those cosmic locks of Argala we just discussed, ultimately answers to the agenda set by the Atmakaraka. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do we actually calculate who this king is? Systematically, the calculation method is basically an elimination process. Step 1. Look at the exact longitude of all the planets in your chart. The one with the highest degree, regardless of the zodiac sign it happens to be in, becomes the Atmakaraka. Step 2. If two planets have the exact same degree, we use a cosmic tiebreaker with minutes of arc. The one with higher minutes wins. Step 3. If the minutes are somehow identical, we go all the way down to seconds of arc. Now there is a very specific mathematical rule regarding Rahu. Because Rahu moves backward through the zodiac, its traversed degrees are calculated by deducting its longitude from 30. So if Rahu sits at 2 degrees of a sign, it has actually traversed 28 degrees of that space, making it a very strong candidate for Atmakaraka. So, what's the practical significance of finding this king? Verses 9 through 12 lay it out perfectly. Just as a minister cannot go against their king, the other planets simply cannot predominate over the Atmakaraka. If your Atmakaraka is weak or adverse, other beneficial planets cannot deliver their full auspicious effects. They're like incredibly capable ministers serving a totally powerless sovereign. Conversely, if the king of the soul is strong and well-placed, it can veto the malefic influences of lesser planets. It acts as the absolute highest court of appeal in your entire astrological blueprint. Okay, we have our king, but what about the rest of the royal court? Let's look at the 7 factors of the soul. Looking at verses 13 to 17, they read, Atmakaraka bhagebyo nunansho matyakaraka. This translates to, the planet next to Atmakaraka in terms of longitude is called Amatyakaraka. The text then systematically lists all the others, Vratru, Matru, Pitru, Putra, Gnati, and Dara. Parshara is explicitly stating here that the degree longitude of the planets creates a strict descending hierarchy. This mathematical hierarchy of degrees is a direct, one-to-one translation of the soul's hierarchy of needs and relationships in this lifetime. And here we have it, the complete royal court of the soul. We start with the Atma, the self. The planet with the second highest degrees is the Amatya, representing the minister, your career, and your intellect. Third is Pratru, signifying siblings and courage. Fourth is Matru, the mother. Fifth is Pitru, the father. Sixth is Putra, the children. Seventh is Gnati, signifying obstacles, rivals, and extended relatives. And finally, the planet with the absolute lowest degrees becomes the Darakaraka, signifying the spouse or partner. Your specific planets slot into these exact roles uniquely, based entirely on the exact moment you were born. Now, we must address a really profound philosophical difference noted by the sage himself in the text. There are actually 2 classical schools of thought regarding these variable signifiers. The 7 Karaka scheme combines the roles of Matru, the mother, and Putra, the children, into one single signifier, using only the 7 visible planets from the Sun to Saturn. However, the 8 Karaka scheme includes Rahu as a potential signifier, which separates the mother and children indicators. Parashara documents both of these, showing the incredible depth and rigorous debate within classical astrological tradition, essentially allowing the practitioner to test and verify these cosmic variables for themselves. Let's walk through a practical example from the text to see how this works. This proves exactly how these planetary longitudes resolve into specific soul significators in a real nativity using the 8 Karaka system. Take a scenario where the moon is at 27 degrees, 35 minutes, and 46 seconds. It is the highest, making it the Atmakaraka. Venus is right behind it at 27 degrees, 17 minutes, making it the Amatyakaraka. It's a remarkably close tie, resolved perfectly by the minutes. We then go right down the list. Jupiter at 26 degrees is Bratru, Rahu at 22 is Matru, Mercury at 14 is Pitru, the Sun at 7 is Putru, Mars at 6 is Gnati, and finally, Saturn at the lowest, 3 degrees, is the Darakaraka. This exact progression is the literal mathematical extraction of a human soul's curriculum. So, I want to leave you with this final overarching thought. We've decoded the mechanical obstructions, the argala, which act as the cosmic locks, the traffic lights, and the roadblocks in your life. And we have met the sovereign ruler, the Atmakaraka, who dictates the ultimate purpose and desire of your incarnation. If the king sets the final destination and the locks determine the exact path you have to take, how is the architecture of your specific chart dictating the flow of your karma? The mathematical tools are now in your hands to decode your own astrological